Hey, folks, you see, I'm here with a guest, Casey Scott of Gold Star Astrology. And actually, you might recognize Casey as the one who I always thank in my videos when I bring up the calendar. By the way, you can get Casey's calendar here for 2025. You should really do that. You'll see a link below because these calendars are really a useful way, very helpful way to stay in alignment with what's happening. And Casey and I just finished actually a case study for my 5D Star members. You see there's a bunch of them on the election. And this was a really important one because it was about the candidates and their Dasha cycle. So few things are as important as the Dasha cycle of the two candidates. And you see Casey put together all of these dates between Trump and Harris. They're both in actually a Venus cycle right now. So we're going to talk about this today in general. Welcome, Casey. How you doing? Thanks for showing up for us today.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me. And I always really want to express my gratitude for you for sharing those calendars on your updates. I really, really do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you putting them together because, even just like this case study here, people don't realize Casey put all this together. I didn't. And I know if I've seen he's done some research, I know he's going to have all these dates. And I love having dates, someone who's going to do that kind of work, and then we can just show up and talk about it. So thank you for all your diligent work. You deserve everything you get with your, from your calendars and all your work. And again, everyone, you'll have a link to his stuff. Definitely subscribe to anything that he does. He's an excellent researcher and astrologer. So looking at all these dates, what do you think? What did we just talk about?
So really, you touched on it there, is we have the two candidates and they both have two different charts. They're both in two different dashas, but the sub dasha is the same. They have Trump is in Jupiter, Venus, and Kamala Harris is in Rahu, Venus, right? So it's like we have that little Venus commonality to it, right? So
big time connection, Venus.
Right. And so we can read their charts to see what Venus is for each candidate, but we also have the benefit of history, right? And they've all been through, because when you run for president, you're usually a little older and you've been through a number of dashas. And so you have some experience, and we have some, there've been public figures for a long time. So we have information about those times to kind of pull from and see how has Venus been for each of these candidates. Right. So just from reading Trump's chart, we can tell that Venus for a Leo is a more difficult energy for them, right? Because Venus is the planet of getting along and making agreements and doing all that. Whereas, Leo wants to be the one in charge and everybody listens, right? And so, but it's also the third Lord and the 10th Lord ruling the Rahu sun, right? So there's a lot of power there, and it shows like how he got lifted into the presidency and being so famous. But what we also see is it's located in Cancer, the 12th house for our Leo ascendant. So that 12th house is the house of loss, and mostly it's just the drain of energy and resources and money, and it's also a place of fantasy and imagination, and
we can even see, like when we look at his Moon Venus Dasha, this is one of the times when his first wife filed for divorce, and it was actually the beginning of a very difficult time when he went from being kind of a celebrity in the culture, seen as a rich guy or whatever. This was a time really of scandal in the early 90s when he filed for divorce. Then it came out he had an affair with Marla Maples, and then there was all of that stuff, and he became more of like a kind of tabloid buffoon a little bit. Again, not to be so mean, but I mean, before he was really held, people had this idea, oh yes, he's a big rich tycoon or whatever. Then that happened, and then shortly thereafter he had all these bankruptcies and stuff. So Moon Venus, and again I say this because the moon is the ruler of Venus, showed a time when as periods of loss happened, and it was so bad that he couldn't even get loans from banks anymore and stuff. So it was the beginning of a real loss time for him, but a prominent loss. Prominent rules the 10th house and his Rahu sun, but loss. So he became kind of prominent and known for loss and scandal and whatnot. And again, that was decades ago because he's an older guy. So yeah, Trump's Venus has that definitely much more of a give and take ironic quality, because it does rule this powerful Raja Yoga in the 10th, but then it's in the 12th house. It almost couldn't be worse with its placement. It's even with Saturn, the other devastating planet, right? And so it's much more ambiguous. Whereas with Kamala Harris, it's different. It's much more positive.
Right. So yeah, Kamala Harris is for a Gemini. Venus is a very natural energy, right? Because Gemini is a very social, likes to have conversations, likes to have fun, doing all that stuff, and Venus is a very social, creative planet for them, right? So it's automatically, there's more congruency to that energy, right? And it rules the Sun and Mercury in Libra, and then Jupiter in Taurus, right? So that it also rules the 10th Lord in the 12th house, which is interesting for both candidates.
Both of them have it, and both of that is getting ruled.
Yeah. And the Venus is exchanging with the Sun, and you've talked about that before, and it's just adds a lot of power and juice to that energy. And so just reading the chart as a practicing astrologer, you start to get these theories, right? You start to get these little things, and then you add the context of history, and it adds texture to it, right? So you're automatically thinking, I think Venus is a pretty strong energy for Kamala Harris. And what do you see, right? We see during her Venus Dasha, she was growing up, right? So there was a lot of different things going on. Her parents got divorced. She moved to Canada, graduated college, and did all that part of her growing up. But Sun Venus, right, is when she's 30 years old now. So she's really asserting a life of her own. She was appointed to the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board by Willie Brown, who she was dating at the time. But it was a big lift in her career. It was a big kind of out of just being a deputy DA in Alameda County.
Yeah, we can see those Venus subcycles show a lot of accomplishment.
Yeah, so we looked at the history and added like, wow, there's some big things happening during Venus in her chart. And so it was just something that was very interesting. And so I decided to come on with you and talk about some of those things in detail, which we just did. And that was really, we both learned as we're doing it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was really good to make it concrete, because you can definitely see where it's more of a loss. There are more losses and ambiguity in Trump's Venus, which we would expect, and more gains. And in fact, many of the big gains becoming DA, becoming AG of California, all of that happened with when Kamala Harris was in her Venus subdasha. And again, when you look at the rulerships, Venus rules the Sun and Mercury, those two identity factors. It also rules the 10th house ruler, even though it's retrograde in the 12th. It's still ruling the 10th house ruler. So you see the impact on career and whatnot. So again, we just spent about 45 minutes going over that. That case study is uploaded for people. And again, I do it this way for a couple reasons. Sometimes people, again, these long 45-minute videos relative to YouTube, again, you have to be careful, because even if people watch 10 minutes of it, YouTube says, oh, they only watched 25%, and they can kind of penalize you. Plus, if some people, and let's be honest, some people are so triggered by anything that's not favorable about Trump, they just start unsubscribing or doing stuff. That also hurts you in the algorithm, by the way. So that's the reason. And by the way, it's not really even, gratuitously unfavorable. It's just honest. You just saw the dates. So if you want to see us really go through the case study as well, you can just join it's actually Sam's member site. And what you do, actually, you can just click join under the video, but then you just go to that link that has the join button and join at the Oracle 5D avatar level, and then you get those videos. So I'd love to share those case studies with you again, as well as when you join at the 5D level, you also get the recent new moon in Virgo, solar eclipse for all 12 signs. That was almost 40 minutes. incredibly profound eclipse that we just had, and all these other forecasts that you get. This is just within the last week. So there's tons of stuff that you get if you did want to join. But even if you don't, I hope you've enjoyed this case study. Casey, anything else you want to say about what we did? I just wanted to get that plug in there so people know.
Yeah, I think that it's just we're showing people how to take astrology out of this realm of imagination and theoreticals and, kind of learning, but not really putting it into practice. And we're showing you how to put it into practice and to take the dates, take the case studies, bring it down to earth, and just see it. It's a very Virgo eclipse type of thing that we just did. And so it's just showing you guys how to bring the theories down into just knowledge.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to see as well, just, going through this history and a kind of history lesson and how to do astrology at a high level. So even aside from any thing with the election, again, for me, these things are always opportunities just to talk about astrology, to learn astrology. Of course, elections are big. We all have feelings about the people, usually too many, because these aren't our friends. These are people that hopefully we have some detachment and we're electing them to do a job. That's how I've always seen it. I've always looked at, again, and even if I wanted one more than the other to do the job, my job as an astrologer would be to be honest, because I even said, aside from everything else, and I'll just say this, even though Kamala Harris's dashas look much more favorable, Donald Trump could easily win simply because of our electoral college system. Joe Biden got 8 million more votes the last election, and he still only won by 40,000 votes in 3 states. So that's why predicting U.S. elections is so complicated, because the one that could win by a landslide doesn't always win the election. So yes, and when you're looking at charts, you're looking at a kind of gross situation. Who's better? Who is more popular? Again, it's kind of like a sports game. Imagine if you had to pick the winner between 2 teams, but the one who got the most points wasn't the one who wins, because at the end, there's this other arbitrary thing that you just simply can't account for. Like, some stat like, maybe this team got more points, but actually the one who wins is the one whose ratio between passes and kickoffs and fumbles was less. It's something that you just can't calculate for. That's kind of what it is.
And just to mention that, part of the problem with, like you said, putting yourself out here and talking about these people is people have demonized one or the other or both of the candidates. And when you go through their history and mark these dates and this, it really does humanize them, and it makes you very neutral about them and their life, seeing them having kids and parents dying. And it's like you see them as a human being and not just as this kind of propaganda thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And that's what we should be doing. We should be having discrimination about this. These aren't our friends. Our whole sacred honor shouldn't depend on that kind of thing. Of course, our country does. So it's a huge thing. But relative to doing the work of astrology, for me, they're just interesting case studies. I mean, I did one on P. Diddy. I did them on Taylor Swift. I'll do them on anyone to see astrology working well. So when you have 2 of them and you have this type of moment, it's a great opportunity and a great way to learn. So we'll leave it at that. And, Casey, I definitely really appreciate you coming. And again, one more plug for Casey's calendar. You want to definitely go and get that. It will really help you, whether you want to, have it as part of your Google plugin, calendar or anything else, that will also be important for you. So we'll leave it at that. And thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel.